Hi YouTube, welcome to the Pagan Perspective. This is Wednesday and I'm subbing for Eric this week. Hi YouTube, this is the Pagan Perspective. I am Sabirasri, aka Megan, and I'm subbing for Eric this week. And as you know, this month, if you've been watching, we are choosing our own topics out of a big list, which is kind of neat. So you get a little something different every day, and the hosts get to change it up. And it's kind of nice to change things up every once in a while, shake it up. So today we are going to talk about cultural misappropriation. And I do say misappropriation because I loved what Yucca said about cultural appropriation really being misappropriation. So I like using her term for it. I think it's much more accurate in this case. So the question came from TheRitzyMuffin, as well as another add-on question that was all about basically, what do we feel about cultural appropriation and misappropriation and how it relates to the pagan community? Because frankly, a lot of what we do is taking from other cultures. And that is part of what paganism is all about, or at least has become all about in the modern time. We are taking parts of other cultures that resonate with us, parts of other cultures that really speak to us and call to us, and incorporating them into our own faith. So for me, I have a hereditary form of witchcraft, of paganism, and so it's sort of set. There isn't a lot of cultural misappropriation within my personal path. However, when I look at just the daily things that I do, I can see cultural misappropriation, not even in the pagan sense, but just in the way we live our lives. So America in and of itself is sort of this giant petri dish of cultural appropriation. It's all about that melting pot and bringing in of other cultures and adopting things. If you look at some of the things that you might do, some of them are from other cultures. Some of them are things that didn't come from your bloodline, hereditary, culture that you were brought up in. And then we kind of expand that definition of culture then, and we say, well, when does all this melting pot of other cultures where we've adopted extra things into what we believe and other ways of approaching holidays and approaching our life, when does all that become a new culture in and of itself? How do we draw the line and say that, well, this is just this sort of emerging society that's taking from other cultures to create itself? When does that culture, that new one, become a culture of its own? And that's where it gets tricky. Because I feel that one of the important things to note here is that every single culture on the face of the planet has used cultural appropriation at some point. The Romans were renowned for it. They would come in and they would let whatever culture was going on already in the place that they just conquered continue. And they would merely just add to that culture and then absorb the new cultural traditions within themselves. In a lot of ways, it was very smart, and it's probably why the Roman Empire was able to expand as far as it did. We all know it fell, yada yada. This isn't a talk about Romans. The point, though, is every culture brings in elements from other cultures. Now, I really liked what Yucca had to say, in particular, that the key to all this comes down to respect. If you're doing it in a disrespectful way, that's when it becomes a problem. If you are finding something in another culture, in their religion, in their practices, in their faith, for example, one of the things that I do is I love practicing meditation. As we know, meditation is basically the root of Buddhism. And though other cultures practice meditation, it is most commonly associated with Buddhism. And many of the techniques for mindfulness and such come out of Buddhism. I love those techniques. I think they're wonderful. And I don't see any problem using them as an incorporation into my faith because I'm treating them with reverence and respect. And that's the key. When taking in other forms, other bits and pieces from other cultures and religions, you have to have reverence and respect for it. And when you do, then it's not the misappropriation. Then you're using it in the true spirit that it was meant for, and it can add something to your faith. Now, that's not to say that there isn't a controversy about certain religions having an issue with some parts of their religion being appropriated. So, for example, the Native American community, and not all of them, however, there are some who are very frustrated that many pagans are taking on elements of Native American spirituality. And one of the biggest problems is that many books written on Native American spirituality are written not by natives. So the people teaching other people and writing about it are not the natives. In fact, you'll find basically there might be one or two out there, but there are no real natives who are out there writing and teaching about Native American spirituality to anyone outside of their tribe or their faith. You're not going to see it happen, or at least not frequently. I'm not saying that it hasn't happened. I'm just saying it's not something that's actually out there. And when you do see a lot of these writers, they might say, well, I have this amount of Native American, so that qualifies me. And unfortunately, okay, yeah, you have that amount of Native American in you, or American Indian. I use Native American because I am a Native American, and my tribe prefers it because we are not located in the United States. We're actually located in Canada. So a Native American for North America versus an American Indian, it's just sort of something we prefer. But I know that many of, especially the Southwestern Indians, currently prefer American Indian right now. So when I say this, just know that there are many different terms, and I'm meaning them all with the utmost respect. So I am Kanesatake. So this is Mohawk from the Iroquois Nation, and I do belong to a tribe. I am registered, and I think it's important that people understand a lot of the people writing these books or writing blogs and things like that, trying to talk about Native American spirituality, are not associated with the tribe. They might have some ancestry lineage down the line that maybe even they can track. However, they're not currently associated with tribes. Now, if they are, that's great. And I would hope that they have the permission of the tribe to be teaching or speaking about the spirituality or any of the sacred practices. I would really hope that they were doing that. However, the majority of the people who write books, and especially blogs and things on the internet, are not associated with the tribe. They don't have a membership, and they can't trace their lineage. They just know that, oh, well, there was somebody back then who, had a baby, and that's how it got in. And that's not really true lineage when it comes to speaking tribe-wise. So I also have a clan. I'm Bear Clan. And it's important to know that within the structure of the tribe, there are things and positions that you need to hold, and your blood does that for you. And if the blood isn't there, then you're not part of it. And I know we try in the pagan community to say that blood doesn't necessarily matter, that it can be your reincarnated spirit, that it's your calling, it's what resonates with you. And I get that. And believe me, I do understand that as well. However, in this case, it's very different. Blood matters. And that's not to say that you can't be adopted into some of these cultures. Certainly you can marry into these cultures. However, the blood does matter when it comes to actually being part of the tribe and being able to be recognized as part of the tribe. So just keep that in mind when you read a lot about Native American spirituality, that most of the information is not correct, and that most of the information is not coming from the source. So it's really important that you recognize that, and that many of the tribes are not looking for you to appropriate their religion. They actually don't want you to. So be respectful and be reverent of that. Just because it might feel like a calling for you to pick your totem animal or to dance with a skin, and it might feel good to you. However, just know that in particular, there are tribes who don't want you to do that. They don't want you to appropriate that part of their culture in that way. And that's where the reverence and respect comes from. If a culture does not want you to appropriate that piece of it, that's where the respect needs to be shown. And I think as a pagan community, we can really respect that part of them, and maybe we can incorporate, you know, the thought of it. Maybe we can work with a spirit animal in our own meditations, but maybe leave that out of the public eye when we are going to a pagan event or something like that. I think it's just really important to recognize that. And as far as other cultures, though, that don't have as many problems with having things appropriated, I say just make sure that you are honoring that memory and honoring the spirit of it, and make sure that it's a true calling for you and treat it with the reverence that it deserves, and I think you'll be okay. That's pretty much it for today. This is one of those topics that I think it can spark a lot of debate. And I'm sure it probably will be, and I'm sure I probably have different opinions than everybody else. And that's the joy of this channel, and hopefully you all are having a wonderful day. The weather's finally starting to turn around up here, and I'm excited. And that's all I have. So, blessed be.